is live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India special broadcast. DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and with me is my dear colleague Mocklin.
Namaskar, Sakal. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a historic trip to Kuwait. The country recently chaired the Supreme Council of the Gulf Cooperation Council, or the GCC, in early December. And India, has a large sphere of influence in these Gulf countries, with an overall population of around 9 million. In fact, in Kuwait alone, there are around 1 million people of Indian origin. They play a vital part in the economy, Sakal.
Absolutely, Mark. And yes, Indian professionals like engineers, doctors, chartered accountants, scientists, in fact, software engineers, experts, management consultants, architects, technicians, nurses, retail traders and businessmen, and you name it all, are all present in Kuwait. And Prime Minister Modi's trip is expected to deepen and consolidate further the bilateral relations, particularly in the domain of energy, trade and labour cooperation, while also reaffirming India's commitment to strengthening ties with the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, or what they call GCC.
Right, indeed. And these 6 GCC countries are the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, as well as Bahrain.
Yes. So in the next 3 hours, we are going to get you rolling live coverage from Kuwait, with DD India's team joining live from there. And also we will be joined by subject experts and eminent former diplomats to decode the significance of Prime Minister Modi's visit to that part of the globe, which comes after a long gap of 43 years. All that and much more on this special broadcast.
Indeed, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived in Kuwait. It's a 2-day visit, as Sakal and I were saying. He's arrived on Saturday, and this marks a significant milestone in India-Kuwait relations, because this is the first time an Indian Prime Minister is visiting Kuwait in 43 years.
Yes.
So,
and Prime Minister Modi's visit aims at strengthening the India-Kuwait friendship across various sectors, across various domains, and deepening India's historical linkages with Kuwait, as the two nations have shared interest in peace, in security and stability in West Asia. During the visit, Prime Minister Modi will be holding meetings with the Emir of Kuwait, the Crown Prince, and the Prime Minister of Kuwait.
And after his arrival in Kuwait, in fact, Prime Minister wrote on social media platform X that he will undoubtedly strengthen the India-Kuwait friendship across various sectors. These are visuals of the Prime Minister arriving. And upon his arrival at the hotel in Kuwait, Prime Minister received a warm welcome from members of the Indian community. It's the largest expatriate community in Kuwait. The Indian diaspora has a population of over 1 million people, forming a living bridge between India and Kuwait.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi greeted and interacted with the members of the Indian diaspora as he reached at a hotel in Kuwait City. We showed viewers those very fantastic visuals, and the Indians in Kuwait warmly welcomed the Prime Minister with some colourful performances by artists. You saw that as well. So now let's listen into what they have to say about their meeting with their Prime Minister.
I'm very happy today because I never thought like I will get a chance to meet him. I am Dr. Fibisha, coming on behalf of Indian Doctors Forum, and this is a very special day for me. And thank you so much, everyone who gave this opportunity.
It was such a blessed moment. I don't know how to express. We are really thrilled. Yeah, goosebumps came. I don't know how to express.
Yeah, my name is Renu. I am Kathak artist here, and I performed my art in front of PM sir. Really, when the moment when he entered, and then that spiritual aura he has, and the goosebumps came, we are overwhelmed actually.
Very nice, very nice. My name is Jay Krishnan. I was performing Kathakali. I'm basically an engineer working with Kuwait Airways in Kuwait, and it's once in a lifetime achievement for us, and there is nothing which best can happen to us. We were so happy to have performed for the PM.
Well, in Kuwait, in a humanitarian gesture, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Mangal Sen Honda, 101-year-old former IFS officer, Indian Foreign Service officer, after a request on social media X by his granddaughter. The Prime Minister Narendra Modi responded to the social media request, showing how he connects with Indian citizens across the world. The Prime Minister received a heartwarming welcome as well by the Indian diaspora in Kuwait.
And in another rare meeting, Prime Minister Modi met Abdullah Al-Baroon and Abdul Latif Al-Nasef in Kuwait. Abdullah Al-Baroon has translated both Ramayana and Mahabharata in Arabic, while Abdul Latif published the Arabic versions of Ramayana and Mahabharata, the famous Indian epics. During the meet, Prime Minister Modi also signed a copy of both the Indian epics. Prime Minister had also spoken about their efforts in one of his episodes of special broadcast Man Ki Baat.
Indeed, and we are joined by Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, former Secretary from the Ministry of External Affairs, joining us on Zoom link from New Delhi, and Meena Singh Roy, former HOD, West Asia, JNU, also joining us on Zoom from Gurugram. Well, so thank you very much, both of you, for being with us. Ambassador Bhattacharya, let me start by you. Cultural connection seems to be pretty vital when we see that, you know, the centuries-old relations. There was a time when the rupee was legal tender in Kuwait. You know, can you put into context the kind of cultural connection between the two countries?
Well, as you know, firstly, thank you so much for having me on this program on the occasion of Prime Minister's very historic visit to Kuwait. India and Kuwait share a very deep relationship which goes back into a civilizational context. As you know, India and Kuwait, that region that is part of Arabia, have had contact since the very beginning, and people have been traveling back and forth. The western coast of India has been home to many of them, like a second home. In fact, the Emir himself had a home in Bombay for a very long period of time. And as you mentioned, till 1961, the Indian rupee was also legal tender. But today, these have assumed a very new context, because apart from the trade and philosophical exchanges that the two sides have had between the Arab Peninsula, Kuwait in particular, and India, today we find that this is diversified into a much more modern context. And therefore, the spread of Indian cinema, for instance, the Indian arts and culture, Indian music, dance, yoga is very, very much popular today over there. And we find that there is great interest amongst the Arab people, the Kuwaitis, who are natives of that land, in our culture as well. You notice, for instance, how our friends over there have translated the Ramayana and Mahabharata. And this is true for many, many other texts. For instance, many of the works of Rabindranath Tagore have been translated over there, and they are studied as part of the curriculum. The same goes true for a lot of Mahatma Gandhi's works. And so they connect.
Professor Roy, coming to you. Now, after a long, in fact, rather a very long gap of 43 years, we have an Indian Prime Minister visiting that part of the globe, and especially under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Diplomatically speaking, how significant is this in terms of India and its significant Gulf outreach?
I think this is much, needed and awaited visit of Prime Minister, which was actually, a lot of expectation from the Gulf states. If we look at, the success story of Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji to the West Asian region, I think, two major countries, have been very close partners of India. The GCC countries, as was mentioned, mainly Saudi Arabia and UAE. Oman. So I think Kuwait was one country where there was a lot of expectation. He was supposed to go in 22, and then finally he's there at a time when the whole region is witnessing the conflicts and a very critical time for Prime Minister.
Right. We seem to have a bad connection with you, ma'am.
Ambassador can continue. Sir, if you could hear us, significance in terms of Gulf outreach.
Yeah, in terms of Gulf outreach.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, please go ahead.
Right. So I think it is very important from the context that we are looking at building closer partnership with the GCC countries mainly. And Kuwait, if we look at the geography, if we look at the resources, if we look at the diaspora, I think from all three aspects, I would say it's a very, very significant visit. You already mentioned 43 years we never had the Prime Minister, the high-level visit. So from that context is very important. From the regional context, it is very important. And thirdly, it is very important from the bilateral point of view. So I think all three aspects that we're looking at it is a very, very significant visit. And I'm sure it will have a lot of impact. There have been some issues when we are talking about the Kuwait particularly, and with the personal connect that Prime Minister Modi has been able to very successfully achieve. I'm sure that this visit is going to deliver desired results as we are looking at it.
Right. Professor Roy, you did mention about the conflicts. Now, India, of course, with such a large population or people of Indian origin living in this region, is personally invested in the entire region. But also, the fact that India is neutral in these conflicts, and India plays a role of peace. How is this, going to play out in terms of the Prime Minister's visit?
I would say, when we look at the entire region, there are areas of conflicts, there are areas of stability. And when we are looking at the Gulf partner countries, there is, I would say, comparatively, stable, life that we see unfolding out there. So the conflict zones had to be dealt with. Now, India has moved, from a very silent, actor to a very proactive and an active country today. Regionally also, there is a sea change, I would say. There is a paradigm shift in terms of what is the image of India in the region, and how there are growing expectation, not only globally, but even regionally. I think India India will have to have a very, very balanced approach. But at the same time, given its image, given Prime Minister Modi's image, and his ability to deal with, the conflict ridden, area, and also with the personal connect with all of them.
Okay,
I mean, India has good relations with Palestine. India has good relations with Israel, with Iran, with Saudi Arabia. And, India has navigated its relationship very smartly.
In fact, ma'am, you yourself spoke about it. Now, if you carefully look at the Kuwait Declaration, Ambassador, the GCC countries have taken a very strong position in terms of ending the conflict. Special mention the war in Gaza, occupation of Palestinian territories, and India has always advocated the path of dialogue and peace. And in that sense of term, how significant is Prime Minister Modi's two-day visit in Gulf, in Kuwait, from their point of view?
So from my perspective, I think Prime Minister basically has two primary objectives. The first one is obviously to strengthen our bilateral relations with Kuwait. And this again has two specific components. One is to consolidate the partnership that we've built over time, which is largely based on energy security, the human security of people going back and forth, and trade. And at the same time, the second priority within the bilateral context is to put a focus on how we build this into a future-oriented partnership. You know, the kind of partnership that we have built with the United Arab Emirates, for instance, and with Saudi, and with some others as well in the region. So how do we leverage, as the Gulf economies change their complexion from hydrocarbon-based towards a more diverse economy? And what is the kind of role that India can play in their change and the role that they play in our change? The second big priority that Prime Minister had, and this directly alludes to the context that you brought up, is the regional issue. And as my co-panelist has pointed out, this is really a very transformative period for the region. On the hand, we have a war that has been going on in between Israel and Palestine.
Correct.
We have, of course, already mentioned that we do not want the war to continue and that we must find ways to find peace. And the second one, which has happened very recently, is the very remarkable changeover of governance in Syria, which is, right immediately to the northwest of Kuwait. And this has been a very serious
important.
The old establishment of Bashar Assad has been overthrown by the HTS, who have now taken command. So I think an assessment of the regional situation is something that Prime Minister will do with the Kuwaiti leaders to get an understanding and to share our views, because I think we are not neutral. I think we are friendly towards all, and I think there's a big difference between the two. We are a very positive force in the region. And I think at a time when so much of change is happening, people are looking for leadership. And I think Prime Minister can provide that guidance to that region. Also, at the same time, what we find is that the regional powers over there, be they, Iran or Turkey, are having certain ambitions and certain other ideas about how...
So basically, Ambassador, we'll have... we have 2-3 hours to discuss this, but basically there are more convergences, but there could be more divergences. And having said that, as far as those minor divergences are concerned, how is India going to negotiate those conversations when it comes to pressing for peace and stability in the region? We're going to talk about all of that, but we have something more on the broadcast. Mark, what is next?
Yes, indeed. Let's talk about the relations. India and Kuwait enjoy friendly relations traditionally. In fact, India was one of the first countries to establish diplomatic relations with Kuwait, following its independence from the British protectorate that it was in 1961. And in 2021-22, both countries celebrated the 60th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations. The last high-level visit from either side occurred in 2013, when the Prime Minister of Kuwait had visited India. Now, Prime Minister Modi had met the Kuwaiti Crown Prince Sabah Al Khalid Al Sabah Al Hamad Al Mubarak Al Sabah on the sidelines of the UNGA in New York. This happened in September of 2024.
And also, Kuwait is a critical partner for India, ranking as the 6th largest supplier of the crude oil. Now, oil is an important aspect here. India has consistently been among the top trading partners of Kuwait during financial year 2023-24. The numbers are on your screens. Total bilateral trade with Kuwait amounted to a huge volume of 10.47 billion US dollars, while Indian exports have increased from $1.56 billion in 2022-23 to $2.1 billion in 2023-24, with an year-on-year growth registered at 34.7%. The top 5 export items on the list are aircraft parts, cereals, organic chemicals, vehicles, electric machinery. Kuwait ranks as India's 6th largest supplier of the crude oil, with about 3.0% of India's total energy needs and 4th largest of the LPG. Talking about investments, Kuwait Investment Authority's estimated investments in India are more than 10 billion US dollars, a sovereign wealth fund with assets in excess of 800 billion US dollars.
Indeed.
Let's go back to our panelists, Ambassador Roy and Professor. Ambassador, sir, we were talking about India's role and especially the peace and stability in the region. You were speaking about the Syria, the geographical proximity. Now, in that sense of term, first of all, what is expected, the kind of conversations that are going to come up, and what all India brings to the table when this is discussed?
So I think, we have now defined the region as our extended neighborhood. And when you say neighborhood, that has a very specific context and a very special relationship. And I think that's what we would like to develop. So we wish to move or graduate from the simple issues of energy and manpower support towards a more broader context, which provides the bilateral complementarities in these and look for opportunities in new areas. So I think that will be the key issues that we will wish to discuss. Both of us are undergoing transformation. Kuwait has its Kuwait Plan 2035, in which privatization and getting more integrated in the global economy is part of its mandate. And we can be a very good partner in that, particularly when we look at the kind of support that we can extend to Kuwait in the digital area and the IT-enabled services, the UPI and many other functions that we can really help them with. The second area that I think we would be very engaged in would be the kind of investments that Kuwait can make in India. And Kuwait has been interested to be more engaged in the energy sector in India. That is quite apart from supplying crude oil and LPG. And therefore, the kind of connections that we can have, the forward linkages that we can look into with the Kuwaiti side and the KIA, the Kuwait Investment Authority, has been a very keen partner in that particular aspect. The third aspect that I think is what is the kind of leverage that we will be able to bring about through the GCC, the Gulf Corp, because we have much deeper engagement with the GCC today. We are thinking of having an FTA with them, and Kuwait will play a key role in those negotiations. We have concluded one with the United Arab Emirates, but now with the rest of the GCC. And the fourth aspect would, of course, be the regional, which we can talk about in detail later.
Professor Roy, so if we look at energy cooperation, it's been largely in the area of fossil fuels, and we are moving towards renewable energy. So in what context, can this also, that transition be made in this relationship? And apart from that, apart from that, India is strong in healthcare and pharmaceuticals, in education, maybe even looking for infrastructure. These are the kind of areas that perhaps, can be on the table.
I think bilaterally, there are many areas where we can move as far as the relationship between India and Kuwait is concerned. You referred to energy. Yes, for a long time, we will continue to get our, energy sources from Kuwait and the Gulf partners. But there is also, an attempt. India has been the leading country when it comes to, the renewable energies. And I hope Kuwait very soon joins the Solar Alliance. That is what is one. The second aspect, I think, is when the reference was made to infrastructure development, and that is where the golden opportunity lies for our country and the companies. India could very well, I mean, I'm not saying there isn't, but I think there are greater opportunities which should be taken into account and pushed by, the private sector, and be part of Kuwait's Vision 2035 when it is about infrastructure development. Education, I think, is an extremely important area where there are countries, they want to, have the institutes like IIMs and IITs, and India has that capability and potential. There could be special land provided to India to build and these educational institutions, the vocational training centers. This would go a long way. And the other unique, I think, feature of India's foreign policy has been, the demand-driven, approach, which means that what Kuwait is expecting from India, what is beneficial for both the countries, that is, I think, a key element, developmental partnerships that we have spoken about, So if talking about building those, partnerships with the country, it will be demand oriented, then it goes a long way. So education, right, infrastructure, many technical institutes which would be very, very useful for Kuwait actually is something which could be, seen as building in terms of long partnership that we are looking at.
Ambassador Bhattacharya,
maritime domain is another area.
Sure, we'll bring that into the discussion. But we've been showing visuals of the Prime Minister meeting Mangal Sen Honda, who's a 101-year-old Foreign Service officer, ex-Foreign Service officer. We have with us Ambassador Bhattacharya, who's also a distinguished former Foreign Service officer. So maybe, do you know Mr. Honda by any chance, Ambassador Bhattacharya?
No, unfortunately, I do not know him personally. Okay. But, it's been really a remarkable thing that there are so many distinguished Indians who made a mark for themselves in the Gulf region and who made it their second home. So I would understand that Mr. Honda is one of them. And it is so kind and generous of the Prime Minister to find time and to specially seek out this opportunity for him to meet with the gentleman.
Yes, it's a very heartwarming visual as well. Indeed. That very solid handshake speaks volumes about Prime Minister Modi's connect. And talking about that connect, one cannot but speak about the diaspora. Requesting our guests to please stay with us, and we also are looking at around 1 million strong diaspora and the largest expatriate community in Kuwait. That's something like
about
21% of the Kuwait's total population. That's a very significant dimension of Prime Minister Modi's visit to Kuwait. The Indian community, with a strength of just over 1 million, is the largest expatriate community in Kuwait. We mentioned that, and is regarded as the community of first preference among the expatriate communities. Although large proportions consist of unskilled and semi-skilled workers, but there are also professionals like engineers, doctors, chartered accountants, scientists, software experts, management consultants, architects, technicians, nurses, retail traders, as well as businessmen. The Indian business community in Kuwait has carved out a huge niche in the market there in retail sector as well as in distributorship as well. And there are over 200 Indian associations registered with the embassy. And having said that, Ambassador Bhattacharya, this is going to be a huge boost to already a community, expatriate community there, which are their top preference.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. We have the largest community, diaspora community in the Gulf region. And as you mentioned, over 9 million of them in the region and 1 million of them in Kuwait alone. they are a very distinct community, and I think they're very, very well received and appreciated. Over a period of time, it has become very natural for the Arab leaders to comment on the hard-working nature of the Indian community, be they low-skilled workers or the highly skilled professionals, and refer to the huge contributions that the Indian community has made to the local economy, that is to the Kuwaiti economy. And that is exactly the kind of reputation that our Indians are always well known for, because they make a mark for themselves, they work hard, they're industrious, and they contribute to the economy. At the same time, they also retain their identity in a very remarkable and beautiful manner. So part of this is the kind of cultural connect that they bring about with the people, encourage the deeper contact and the understanding of each other's societies. And so in many ways for the community, this is a landmark occasion to have a visit of the Prime Minister and to be able to engage with somebody who is so engaging and who is so warm and personable. So I think what will happen is that the esteem that the community has in the society will only go up further. And I think that is a great evidence, because over a period of time, what we have been trying to do is to make sure that we have higher value addition in the diaspora earnings that go to Kuwait. Also to see that they have better security and facilities in the workplace that they are in. And we've made a lot of progress with some of the other countries, and we've been working with Kuwait on this as well, so that the Indian who's working in Kuwait has a better regard and respect for himself.
So we'll come back to this topic actually when Prime Minister is due to visit one of the labor camps later in the day. Unfortunately, in June, one of these camps had a fire in which 46 Indians lost their lives. So, of course, this the housing community, how Indian workers are housed in Kuwait. Prime Minister will be visiting there later in the day. But coming back to you, Professor Roy, on the subject of the International Solar Alliance you did mention. Also, there's the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, which India is hoping that more and more people, more and more countries join. It's critical actually at a time like this, especially in these sort of countries also, which are affected by climate change and probably by disasters as a result of climate change.
Absolutely, you are absolutely right, and I think these are two critical areas where I think there could be some forward movement. India's ability and capability to deal with the disasters was very well received even in a country like Turkey, where we were not going through a very good relations at that time. So I think the image of India in managing these things is something which is very well received in the region. And I do feel that when we're talking about the Gulf countries, I mean, this is where the VIP, the top leadership's visit does bring many, results and in a concrete ways, I would say. So Kuwait and Bahrain were two countries where, experts like us who've been watching West Asia, we always felt that they needed more attention by, and I'm glad that, Prime Minister is finally there today to bring, some more concrete results to our existing very good bilateral partnership with the GCC countries. So let's hope for the best, but I think bilaterally this visit is going to be a beginning of a new partnership and a new era of cooperation between Kuwait and India.
Mark, let's also talk a bit about the education and love for India's culture, music out there in Kuwait. As we just mentioned, Kuwait houses a large expatriate Indian population, and culturally Indian music, films, and in fact also India's cuisines are immensely popular in Kuwait. and their educational ties. The India-Kuwait educational ties are strong. There are around 26 schools in Kuwait which follow CBSE curriculum with over 60,000 students, mainly Indians and some Arab and South Asian expats as well. On 12th of September 2024, an MOU on the establishment of Hindi chair was signed between the ICCR and Gulf University for Science and Technology. Then again, way back in December 2006, an India Study Center at the Faculty of Social Sciences of Kuwait University was set up. India corners have been set up, that's interesting, in Kuwait's technical colleges and Kuwait College of Science and Technology in 2024. And this visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Ambassador Bhattacharya, is going to be another shot in the arm to take it to the level next, considering after a long wait of more than almost 43 years, and especially Prime Minister's global rise. And this being very, very significant for Kuwait, the visit of Prime Minister Modi at their invitation.
Oh, certainly. I think education will be one of the key areas of cooperation as we move ahead towards that future-oriented relationship. And my co-panelists had already referred to that. So apart from school education, which you mentioned, I think the big focus will be twofold. One will be on higher education. The Kuwaitis are very keen to have IITs and IIM kind of facilities in their country. And I think there will be movement towards that. Also across the board in other kinds of higher education, collaboration, partnership, because now under the new education policy, it is also possible to have semesters abroad, collaborations on research projects, exchange of faculty, and these will deepen the ties between the two sides. The second kind of new partnership that we envisage will be in the area of skills. And I think a lot of this will be in the high-end skills, because the world is moving towards a data-dominated society where the digital world will have a very prominent role. The kind of collaborations that we can have in AI, machine learning, also in the fintech, meditech, these kinds of areas where special skills will be required. The kind of logistics network that we are developing with the Gulf region, IMEC being one of them, of course, that's through the United Arab Emirates. But, the kind of logistics network also requires very special skills when we engage in the fungibility and the interoperability of our services. And so that will be another area where we hope to see a fair amount of collaboration. And at the end of the day, there will of power of culture, of course.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, when we talk about school education, we see that, Indians who've done well abroad in the United States, elsewhere, they've, of course, benefited from high quality school education in India. And we see that the CBSE board is now, so well available in the Gulf countries. Maybe, modeling on that, people probably feel the need to become global citizens out of, that kind of education, which is strong in science, strong in arts, in English, all these aspects, which, compared to the other boards around the world, Indians seem to be benefiting from a decent school education. How would you view that?
In my mind, our school education is a good stepping stone towards a solid higher education. But I think as the NEP, the new education policy, has pointed out, there is a lot of work that we need to do, particularly with the learning achievables and having those markers of learning, rather than just having a huge amount of data that a person accumulates. And because the world today is changing a lot, and I think our school education is also undergoing that transformation. At present, what we find is that in the Gulf, the most popular school education system for the locals is really the English education. And that perhaps is largely because of the fact that the British had a fairly large presence over there. We are inherited some kind of an English education system as well. So they prefer to go for the British education system. Of course, the international education, as seen in the baccalaureate of Switzerland or the American system, is also popular. But Indian education is largely for Indians and expats from other Asian countries, not so much for the Arabs. And I think we are making the steps towards making it more popular for the others as well.
Yes, and talking about the popularity, there is also Ambassador Mukherjee and Professor Roy, this palpable excitement or builder for this community event today, the Diaspora event. And this is Hala Modi, that is a grand cultural extravaganza that is expected today. So Diaspora has always been a very important dimension wherever Prime Minister goes overseas, and Kuwait is no different. Your thoughts? Professor Roy.
Okay, I think you've very rightly pointed out that diaspora has been a very, very important element of Prime Minister Modi's policies. And when we particularly look at the Gulf, I think the kind of love, affection, and connect the people feel with Prime Minister Modi is basically they are very confident about what Prime Minister Modi can deliver, his image. So I think while we were watching some clips of the statements given by the artists and the doctors out there, it really shows the sea change which we never saw in past. Particularly the diaspora diplomacy has been a very, very successful part of India's foreign policy today when we look at it. And I think the full credit goes to Prime Minister Modi because of the way he, the body language, the way he talks to the children, to younger generation people, and to various sections of the society who are living there. And I think, the diaspora is something which is the force multiplier when we are talking about building these connects between the two nations. And 1 million people, living in Kuwait can really do wonders. And today it is just not the unskilled people who were there, long time back, but we have diversified people out there. We have doctors, we have engineers, we have people from the finance sector, and fintech is something very, very, important element of any country's development, initiatives that they are taking. So that's their strength, and diaspora can really make that difference. And they, as I said, I see them as a force multiplier to building our stronger partnerships with these countries.
Right. Ambassador Bhattacharya, we've seen the Prime Minister, of course, interacting with the diaspora in many events across the world. This has become a feature of his visits, and this public diplomacy has sort of strengthened India's the NRI's image, in a sense, for the country, for the motherland. Not that it has ever been it needed any strengthening. The community has always been contributing back to India, especially from the Gulf, where, a lot of the expatriate money that has come back in has helped develop many of the states in our country. But, when we look at them anticipating this visit, and that hall is going to be jam-packed, it only holds about 5,000 people. What do you expect from that, from that event?
Well, I think, these events have been particularly significant because it represents the change that is happening within the country, is being conveyed and communicated with our citizens who are overseas. In other words, this is like an extension of the governance model where everyone has to go along, has to be part of the inclusive package that Prime Minister talks about. And now the diaspora has become an important element of that. And I think the diaspora is important for us for three different reasons. The first is they are, in a sense, the ambassadors of India wherever they go. And what they do, what they say, is really a representation of what their country is going through. And therefore, it is very necessary, and Prime Minister believes in this very fervently, that they must be apprised of the remarkable developments that are happening place in their own country. They should not feel that they're far away from home and that this is part of their own experience. Things that we wish to do with our diaspora is that we wish them to be acknowledged by the local community, because it's only through acknowledgement that there will be better recognition, better remuneration, and higher contribution to their system. And I think this is something that Prime Minister has been working very, very assiduously in terms of interactions with the leadership, the Gulf leadership, and he tells them about the great achievements that the Indians have achieved in their country. And the third factor is that as we grow, as we grow, we have to become all part of the same system. And so to integrate them into the global community is the third big objective. And Prime Minister does this at every event that he does for the diaspora overseas, where he engages with them at a personal level, at a collective level, uses them and brings up their spirit and morale so that they can contribute more for themselves as well as for their country.
Okay. Professor Roy, there is also a lot of emphasis on the welfare of the labour force, particularly the Indian labour force, skilled or unskilled labour. The fact that on the Prime Minister's agenda, there is a visit to an Indian labour camp which is planned, and as my colleague Mark talked about the significance or the symbolism attached to it, I think that is also very significant. The welfare of our skilled and unskilled force there. Yes,
it is an extremely important. It's just not the signaling of the actually thing, but it is much more than that, I would say, because the unskilled laborers or the skilled ones, they have always felt that they did not get due attention. So from that point of view, I think Prime Minister's visit to the labor camp is very, very significant part of this visit as I see it. There have been many complaints, which have been coming about from the, problems that these laborers have been facing there. And I think it is the direct indulgence of the top leadership which really makes a difference. So it is just not symbolic, but it is much more than that. And it would really help, in many ways, as far as the laws are concerned, as far as the local, attention is concerned, that there has been, I would say when we're talking about these countries, where we have the kings or the emirs who've been ruling there. So direct connect between the top leadership really makes a difference. And that's where the results are seen in a much more effective way. So for me, I think it is much more than symbolism.
Well, Professor Roy and Ambassador Bhattacharya, do stay with us as we continue to, dwell on the deeper aspects of this relationship. We look historically now, India and Kuwait, the relationship has been anchored. It's also been nurtured by close cultural contacts and people-to-people linkages. In fact, Kuwait has also been invited to join the International Solar Alliance, something that we spoke about a little earlier, and the coalition of disaster-resilient infrastructure. Now, Kuwait has conveyed an in-principle concurrence with its joining of the ISA. Around 26 bilateral agreements, MOUs, have been signed between both sides in various domains, and around 14 agreements and MOUs are at different stages of finalization. The MOU on defense cooperation has been finalized for signing at an appropriate occasion. So these are some of the other aspects of the relationship.
Yes, and elaborating on the already existing cooperation between India and Kuwait, Mark, India and Kuwait have closely cooperated with each other in the fight against COVID-19 pandemic. We can talk about that as well. And India and Kuwait have demonstrated a shared sense of solidarity during the COVID-19 pandemic. If you remember,
Yes.
a consignment of around 200,000 doses of Covishield vaccines was provided,
program.
yes, on COVID on payment basis in February 2021. Separately, even under the Vande Bharat mission, the embassy facilitated travel of around 2,20,000 approximately Indians back to India.
Indeed, as Prime Minister Modi is on this visit to Kuwait, let's now take a look at, some facets of the India-Kuwait relationship over the years.
Okay, we'll play out this special feature, and we request our guests to please be with us. We are going to get back to you with more discussion. Okay, we've been told that we will continue talking to the guest, and we will just play out that special video.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, if I could come to you, the Prime Minister has also been invited to the inauguration of the Arabian Gulf Cup, premier football event that's starting today in Kuwait. How would you look at this? Because, I mean, after all, football is a sport that's growing in India, and it's a sport with a lot of money as well. And perhaps, the sporting culture that the countries can share is also something that helps the relationship grow.
Well, the Gulf Cup is the premier football tournament for the region. And if we recall, 8 Gulf countries are participants in that. And Kuwait, as you know, has a very strong football team. Though if I recall, maybe they're not the current holders, but I think they must be hoping to get the trophy back. Now, India has a very strong connect on football. You would probably recall that Prime Minister had started a very special initiative on football some years ago, in which we went down to the district level to actually train a group of people at different cohorts at under 14, under 16, under 18 were being trained as part of a football camp called, I think, Project 10 Million, where the idea was to get about 10 million footballers trained so that we would then become more competitive globally. And part of this collaboration was that we started working with many of the Arab countries who are actually very good at football in having some of their coaches come. Sometimes our youngsters teams would go across and play over there. And I personally have also been host to one of these teams when they came to Egypt and then to Turkey, where it was part of the same project. So football has a very strong bond for the people of India. The second thing to note is that the Gulf region is actually getting much more involved in sports as part of the diversification of its economy. Because with sport comes a new kind of economy, which can take away some of the pressure that they will feel with the hydrocarbons drying up. And we think that this is something that we can collaborate on. You would have noticed that recently Saudi Arabia has become part of the cricket league, and they're more active in that. So sports is another kind of diplomacy that is happening, and I'm so happy that Prime Minister is going to be at the inaugural session of this very spectacular tournament.
Right, sir. And as we talked about, why is this visit important, special, historic, significant? Let's also take a look at the various facets of India-Kuwait relationship over the years.